Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. One of the first things that I want to make sure is happening, I know we are streaming. I just want to make sure that anybody watching can actually hear us and hear me. So I know Mrs. Mary, I'm looking at your comments right now. If you want to just, your sound is on. My sound is on before I even started. So thank you, Mrs. Mary. All right. So thank you so much, everybody who has joined us. I am here with Mrs. Smith, Miss Eggleston, and Mr. Hahn. Why don't you guys all test your sound just to make sure you're here and everybody can hear you?
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So we're going to kind of go through a quick process here of some overview. I know people have lots of questions. One of the nice things about this program we're doing is that it's a little bit more interactive. We can actually bring your comments up when we want to talk about them. So please feel free to ask questions as we go along. But know that my goal is to go through a quick overview, probably 10, 15 minutes, where we'll hit some of the high points, and then we will quickly get to the questions. So the first thing that I want to start us looking at is just real quick, the district website. And I just point this out because we'll talk about the meetings that we're having right now in a second, but I want to point everybody to the page, the reopening page on the website, and how if you just click on that, there's a couple different things that you will find on this page. You'll find the complete text of our reopening plan right here. You'll find a frequently asked questions section where there's a couple hundred questions and we're adding more every day. And then we're also looking at, this is what we're looking at today. It's an overview of the plan. And on the left-hand side, we're looking at the signups for the in-person meetings, which occur next week. And I'll one of the slides we'll look at is the dates of that. But I wanted you to know, if you want to sign up for the PK6 parent meeting, it's the top link, and the 712 meeting is the link below. So we'll jump back over to the slideshow and we'll get going. And like I said, please ask questions as you want. You have a captive audience of the administration of Arkport. We will do our best to answer every question you have. If we don't know the answer, and because plans are changing pretty quickly, we'll let you know. But what we will do is we will write down that question. We'll write down who asked it. We'll add it to the FAQ on the webpage, and we will directly get back to you with answers to the questions that you have. So first up, we have 4 meetings set up. We are right now in the Facebook Live meeting for today. Next Monday at 5 p.m. is the PK6 in-person meeting. Now, there is a sign-up sheet for that, and that is because we can't have more than 50 people at our meetings. That's the limit. So there's a limit of 45 individuals, so we need you to sign up. So Monday, the in-person is PK6. Then we have another YouTube Live session on Tuesday night, same time, 7 p.m. And then our 4th meeting is in-person for 7/12, and that is on Wednesday. And again, the sign-up for that is on the website, and there's a limit of 45 people for that as well. I'm not going to read this. This is part of our plan. I only bring this up because we have a question already. So I'm going to just show you how this works. I will not bring up every question. And if you don't want me to bring up your question, just please make a note of it in your response. But one of the nice things about this program is that we can bring up questions as they come in. And so then I'm also just not reading a screen and you just don't have to look at me. You can look at a beautiful picture of the 2 young boys and we can read the question together. So will the in-person meetings discuss the same information as tonight? Yes, we will. We will also write down questions that might come up during those meetings. and we'll send them out as well. So it's really 4 opportunities of the same information, Amanda, and what we wanted to make sure is that we offered opportunities. Some parents can't make it at 7 o'clock, so we gave a 5 o'clock. Some parents don't have very good Wi-Fi at their home, so they might have to come in person. So the point is same information, just 4 different times to make sure that everybody has a chance. I just put this up here. There are things that we don't have a choice about in our reopening plan. I'll just take the first one. We have to ensure that we have social distancing of 6 feet and masks must be worn when we can't maintain 6 feet. It's not a choice. It's not something that we had any say in. Buses, students have to wear masks on the bus at all times. It doesn't matter if there's 1 student on the bus, they have to wear a mask. These are the types of things we don't have a choice about. So I'll reference back as we talk or we answer questions about what are the things that we might have had a choice on and what were the things that were mandatory. And I'm gonna say it a bunch, and I'll remind Mrs. Smith, Ms. Eggleston, and Mr. Hahn to jump in whenever they want to.
You're doing a really good job, Mr. Hart.
Okay, that doesn't get you off the hook, Mrs. Smith. Here is just a basic framework, and I like color coding things. And so as we look through our reopening plan, red really has to do with the safe building reopening safety plans. We talk about yellow and the plans of being our student and teacher mental health. And then green goes into the details of what are our learning models? How are we going to make sure that students have every chance to succeed? So this is basically how we started reopening, our reopening planning, these different categories. One of the things, and I took a second to think about it, this plan has come together, I think, in less than 3 weeks. It seems like 3 months sometimes, but we have been talking about this for only a few short weeks. And where we started was a conversation with the Board of Education and the administration about what were some of our guiding principles. What were we going to use to guide our decisions? So quickly, I'll go through them. It had to be as safe as possible for all our students, faculty, and staff. We needed to prioritize our most vulnerable populations of students for in-school learning. We needed to limit the amount of time per day students, faculty, and staff must wear masks. We didn't want to set up a system where we were wearing masks all day long. We needed to allow students to move. There are some school models where students are sitting in the classroom for most of the day. We made the decision that we're going to make it safe, but we're going to move. Our students need to move around, our teachers need to move around. We are going to continue to prioritize our special area classes. We're not canceling PE, we're not canceling music, we're not canceling art. We're going to make them safe, but we're going to continue to do them. And lastly, we needed to make sure that we set reasonable goals for our student, faculty, and staff. I cannot wait to get our students back, but this is going to be a different school year. And our priorities are going to shift this year, and that's okay. Because our goal is to remain open, to keep our kids here. And if we do that, we will grow and achieve, I believe we'll grow and achieve what we've done in the past, but the focus has to be on something different this year. And that's all of our safety and remaining open. So what are some things that we thought about when we started thinking about reopening the building? What's going to be our capacity? When can we repurpose space for instruction? Which students return first? What is the best schedule for balancing equity and complexity? How do we minimize student traffic contents? How do we minimize class transitions? Should my school do we do point of care testing? And then how do we keep our bus services safe and consistent? So we have another question coming in. I'll pull it up. So Why aren't we offering a remote option for those students who don't feel comfortable sending their kids? It's a good question. It comes down to we do not have the resources to offer both an in-school and online model. And that's one of the confusing things for parents is that every school is doing slightly different things. It's easy to look at a bigger school and they have multiple sections, and then they can pull a teacher from teaching an elementary section and they can do an online section. We don't have the same number of staff as other schools. And we made the decision that it wasn't to the benefit of our students or our faculty and staff to ask our teachers to double up and do both at the same time. Because what we would end up with is a lower quality product in both the in-person and virtual. But what we did was, and we'll see, we would go back to those guiding principles of wanting our students in place. Instead of adding an online option, what we're doing is investing in spreading our students out so that when we get to the next couple slides, you'll see that we are dividing up our elementary classes. If we want our elementary students to be here every day, then we need to make sure that they have enough space to be here safely. So we did the reverse of investing heavily into allowing our students to be here safely rather than online options. And there is an option for families with valid medical excuses for their students not to come to school. It is our obligation to offer online education for them. So how we're going to minimize common traffic, we're going to use grade-specific entrances. We are going to use stickers on the hallways, one-way traffic. We're going to cut down on using lockers in the high school. We are going to stagger our cafeteria. We're going to use bottled water. So a follow-up to that last question. We got a question from Tim Kohler. What do you say to families in the community who value an Arkport education but have a genuine concern about sending their child in person due to the pandemic? Tim, I'm going to ask that you stick with me as we go through this presentation because what I know we have done here at Arkport is set up a system that is safe for our students. I can never take away, and I won't question a parent's decision-making process for their students, but I know what we have done is set up a system that is as safe as possible for our students. So how are we going to do the low-tech, high-frequency cleanings? So with our custodians, we're going to be cleaning high-traffic areas on the hour. So we're talking handrails and doorknobs. During the day, every class will be sanitized by the custodian staff at least once. And then obviously every classroom will be sanitized every night. So we're going to be doing high-traffic areas. For our classes, the PK2 grades will be hourly hand washing breaks. And then up from there, PK2, they do, and Claire, jump in whenever you want to. PK2 have sinks in the bathrooms, or sinks in the classrooms. Go ahead, Claire.
They do. And then 3 through 6, they're going to be able to use a combination of washing at the bathrooms and sanitizer for their classrooms.
So we're going to build that into our schedule. So that's our routines for the kids. We're going to have sanitizer at high traffic areas. So say you're coming in off the playground, there's going to be sanitizer for the students as they come in. Teachers will have access to to disinfectant in the classroom. We can't allow students to use disinfectant in the classroom. New York State doesn't allow us, but that's why there's the hand washing and the sanitizing of the hands with other things. But the teachers will have access to that to be able to wipe down things during the day if they need to. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not answering their questions, so I'm going to try to jump back and forth as possible. I will get to you. And so we'll bring up the next question that had to do with online learning. Why can't you go live in the classroom to offer remote learning? Some schools are actually dealing with this problem right now of we do have really good internet connections at school, but there is a issue of streaming out multiple classrooms in multiple districts in the same area, and they haven't really solved that problem. That's more of a technical issue, and I go back to Sue that there is no replacement for in-person instruction. So that's why we're building the system that we think is as safe as possible for our students to come back. And I see other comments coming in, and I promise you I'll get to them. So how do we, going back to our prioritization, when we talk about prioritizing our most vulnerable students, naturally, many people go to our special education population, and we are prioritizing everyday instruction for our special education population. But for our other students, we decided that the priority also had to fall on our youngest students. That's why we prioritize them being here every day. So when you look at this, and we will talk about pre-K because it looks a little odd when we talk and look at the other classes and we're splitting them 3 ways. So if we want to get our youngest students here for instruction every day, what we had to do was make the classes smaller. So we took the classes and split them in from 2 sections to 3 sections. And that's what allows us to have lower numbers in the classroom, social distancing, without having to wear masks. But that's how we get our kids here every day, is by creating more sections. Mrs. Smith, and don't worry, Mr. Hahn, I'll get to you, and Ms. Eggleston too. You want to briefly, I'm going to read some of the comments to see when we can bring them in. Do you want to talk about pre-K?
Absolutely. So if we take a look at the pre-K classroom, many have asked, why is it only one classroom? One of the reasons is because the pre-K classroom is one of our largest classrooms, able to accommodate our amount of students and the centers that they need. They are also located down near our cafeteria. So on the times that our cafeteria is not in use, our pre-K classroom is going to be able to spill over into the cafeteria and use that extra space. We will also have right outside of our pre-K classroom, an outdoor classroom that they'll be able to use that was strategically located. So they are going to get lots of fresh air, and they are going to have lots of space to stretch their legs and to get out and have space from each other.
I'll jump. We're actually going to set up 6 outdoor classrooms. 4 will be tented, 2 will be open air. And we're encouraging, again, to get the separation, to get the fresh air, to get sunlight. We are asking teachers, while the weather is nice, to be going outside at least once a day. That's PK 12. So we're going to get those students outside, and that's another way that we're trying to make it as safe as possible. A couple questions coming in. Megan, if so much is being invested in in-person education, then what will be the fail-safe if we have to close for a lengthy amount of time? We're going to get to that towards the end of this, Megan. I'm not, but we do talk about that and what is our plan, because even if we have to be realistic, even if we are open for most of the school year, there is a high chance that we will have to close, even if it's for a week or 2 weeks at some point during the school year, if there is an infection in the school or in the area. So we do talk about how we are prepared and how September in school is really going to build to being prepared for when and if we have to go online. And we tried to learn as much as possible from last year and the last 3 months of school to help us out this year. So we do have, we're not going to be in the same position that we were last year, and we'll talk about more of that in a second. Shannon, so to clarify, the kids will not be allowed to carry hand sanitizer in their bags. I'm going to tell you and everybody listening, and this is being recorded and you can look at it later, we will not be checking students' bags for hand sanitizer. We never have. I mean, just last year, the backpacks, you get the little hand sanitizer that hangs off the zipper. We will provide the hand sanitizer for all students, but the students can have their own. And there is a qualifier because we're talking PK-12. There's a difference between a 7th grader having their own hand sanitizer and a kindergartner having their own hand sanitizer. And I just have to say that for the record, but I think we all get that. So they can have their own hand sanitizer. And I might have made it a little confusing. Students can't use disinfectant in the school. So we can't give them a bottle of disinfectant and say spray down their desk, or give them a Clorox wipe. We can't do that. The state doesn't allow it. Hand sanitizer is different. Thank you, Shannon. Another one. So a clarification for students with medical exemptions. How are we doing remote for them? We are doing remote for 7 through 12 students who have a medical exemption through GST BOCES. And GST BOCES is going to provide that curriculum. So it will not be our teachers. It will be other teachers that GST BOCES hires to provide the classes for the students. And Sarah can jump in here at any time if I'm not given enough detail. I got a thumbs up. And we are exploring options at this point for our elementary because GST BOCES does not have an elementary program. So just today we started talking to the teachers about whether or not there is interest for holding online classes after school. So we are exploring options, and it is our obligation to have an option for online learning for medical exemptions, so we will have one. All right, next up. We're just talking, this is an example of how we're gonna do the socially distancing upstairs. So when we looked at the elementary, we're splitting the classes to keep the class size around 12. 12 desks is what we can fit in our average classroom, socially distanced 6 feet. Why do we want to socially distance 6 feet? So when the students are in the classroom, they can take off their mask. Hallways, they will wear masks. Common areas, they will wear masks. When they're at lunch, they won't have to wear their masks because we are getting dividers for the tables. So we split the classes upstairs into an AB day schedule. And what it'll end up looking like is, this is just an example of if A is in school, B is at home, and it switches day to day. The students will be getting direct instruction when they are in school, and then they will be assigned work or projects or videos to do at home by themselves in preparation to come back the next day. I don't know where some of these questions fit into the slideshow, so I'm just going to pull them up as they come. We've got a question from Crystal Henshaw. What is the benefit of no lockers? So that is an option that we talked about in preparation. It is actually something that we decided against, but those first couple of slides were talking about how we were starting to plan our reopening. So students will still, this is the perfect time. Mr. Hahn, come on in.
Yeah, so I think the biggest change is that students will be able to carry backpacks. That's the bigger change from last year. Students will still have assigned lockers to them. We are working on that list right now so that a row of lockers goes A, B, A, B, A, B, so kids are not right next to each other, because obviously they'll be in different groups. So that's the biggest change on that, is kids can carry backpacks. We absolutely will have lockers assigned to everybody for those reasons that you listed, Crystal, jackets, lunch pails, things of that nature. So I hope that clarifies some things for everybody.
A follow-up to our outdoor spaces. Amy, if outdoor spaces are being used in the fall, what will happen in the winter months? We will probably, the fall, and we will go and continue to go outside even as it gets colder. But as we get to winter, what we'll probably transition to is less class time outside, but increased, and Mrs. Smith, we've talked about this a lot. There is going to be a lot of outdoor time. And so what it'll switch to is probably more recess, more play, and less sitting during the winter months. But as long as it's warm enough and we will provide the clothing for the students that don't have it, we will be going outside even in the winter months. We had a question of, do you disinfect in between each class period? We don't necessarily disinfect in between each class period. The teachers will have the ability to do that, but that's also why we rely on hand washing and sanitizer coming in and out of the classes. I think it's a perfect question from Ms. Eggleston right here.
That is a good question. So the A and B designation, the first thing that we considered was keeping family members on the same day. So if there's, a 12th grader that's going to be on the A day, then all of that person's siblings in the high school would be on the A day as well. We also had to take a peek at our older kids in 11th and 12th grade, like who was going to BOCES, so that we could keep them on the same day. And then after that, we considered our special education population and which days would work out better for them. And then everyone else is just kind of split up so that we're keeping 12 or less kiddos in a section during the day for each class. Oh, and you will be notified. I'm thinking that kids will be notified when their schedules come out. So that will be closer to the end of the month, last week of August.
Thank you. Here's a question for you, Mrs. Smith.
All right, lockers being spaced out in the elementary with 3 classrooms for, let's see, we have 4th grade with lockers, 6th grade with lockers, 3rd grade and 5th will have lockers. They're going to go every 3 lockers. That way there is 2 lockers in between for spacing. So we won't send all the classrooms at one time. They will go one classroom at a time in order to give some space at the lockers.
Thank you. I see Megan has a question up about signs and symptoms. I am going to hold on to that question, Megan, for a couple slides because we'll go into much more detail about signs and symptoms. This is a question that came up from Michelle. What do we do if we plan on homeschooling? And that would be a couple things. I'll answer the question, but I want to add a couple things after that. You would contact Connie Carr, and she's my assistant, and she helps you out with the paperwork that needs to be filed. But here's something, I've had many conversations already with parents about the choice of homeschooling or the choice of what's going on in education in general. And I first of all, I tell every parent the right choice is the one that you're going to make. And what we can do as a district is that if you choose to homeschool your child and things change, whether that is the general atmosphere of COVID, whether it is a parent sees that what we're doing is effective, you can bring your child back at any time. There are districts around us who are asking students to sign off on a quarter, a semester, or even the whole year. These are big decisions, and I want you to know that for any parent who's making these decisions, as things change, your choice can change, and we will take the students back. Or vice versa, if a family comes in and it's just not working and you want to make the choice, then we can exit the student out. Again, if you end up homeschooling your child and you decide to bring them back, it can't happen overnight. You got to give us a little time, but just know that you're not making a choice that can't be changed rather quickly. Another question about A-B schedule, a good one. How long will the A-B schedule be in place? When can we expect high school to be able to go full-time if infections rates remain little to none? We will be evaluating all of our plans on a monthly basis. One of the things, and we will be doing it constantly, but one of the places that you can absolutely get an update, and I have to do this, I'll be giving the Board of Education much more than monthly updates, but we'll be talking about it at every board meeting. So we will be evaluating monthly, Crystal. That doesn't mean we will change the schedule in October, but I want you to know that it's a regular repeating fashion for every month. And as things are able, as the regulations on us by New York State are relaxed, we will absolutely take steps to get back to 100%. Ms. Eggleston, Mr. Hahn?
Yes, BOCES students will be going every day. And we will be providing transportation to and from on a daily basis to limit any difficulties that students may have in regards to getting up there. BOCES says they're open, so we are going to send them for the sake of our kids, so they're not missing out on instruction, because they're going to be going every day for all districts that they serve.
I'm responding to a question, so I'm going to bring up another one. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Any of you can take this one as I respond to a different question.
I'll take that one. So all kids have to wear masks. At this point, yes, all of our kids have to wear masks. Do we provide them? We do. The school has purchased or is purchasing masks for all the kids. They'll be getting 7 masks, cloth masks, that they'll have for their use. But as Mr. Harper mentioned earlier, they're not something that have to be on all day. We are really trying to provide opportunities that they have mask breaks, that we're spacing their desks, that they are spaced in the cafeteria. They have plastic dividers. We don't want anybody to have to be in masks all day long.
So I just put up in the chat the office number of Mrs. Carr, and she can help you out with if you are thinking about or you just need more information on homeschooling. This is a hot topic. Mr. Hahn?
So, yes, driving themselves is an option, because the BOCES superintendent said so. With that being said, we're trying to be respectful and work with Wildwood in regards to the amount of traffic that campus can hold. There's not a lot of parking up there as it is, so we're going to have to continue to examine that. But yes, it certainly is an option. However, if a student is going to drive themselves to and from, we would need parental permission and permission from BOCES, just like we have in the past for unique circumstances when they pop up.
A good question. Can they wear their own masks? Yes, they can, as long as they are cloth and as long as they cover their nose and mouth. And if we go back to the next question, might be like, why? Those are one of those non-negotiables that the state gave us. If we go way back to the beginning of the slideshow and talk about the mandatory things, they have to be cloth-based and they have to cover the nose and mouth. So they can wear their own masks. And you did talk about, I was typing, Mrs. Smith, you talked about how we're providing masks for every student. Great. Okay, so going on. Student and staff screening. So this goes up to, I think it was previously, I think Megan had questions regarding symptoms, who will be quarantined, who will be tested, and who will be mandatory. So Megan, don't let me forget about your question. If I don't answer it, just remind me to go back up to it. Before we jump in, because this is something that we'll post on Facebook, here's another good question. Is the school still going to provide all supplies again? Yes, we are. So there are no class supply lists. All supplies will be provided to the students. I think this is the 3rd year we have done that, but we're going to do it again.
And to that end, 712 supplies started going into lockers, which are available to students today. We just started that process, which is exciting. It means we're one step closer to having kids in our building again.
So we have a question from John, what are you going to do if a student or parent refuses to wear a mask in common areas? So we will provide a letter that I put out in every student handbook that goes out, and it's on our website, and I can send that out to people. But here's what's going to happen. It's like no other. It's just like any other disciplinary issue, and it is not optional for a parent, a visitor, or a student to not wear a mask in common areas. So the letter is pretty direct, and it says we will use what is available to us in the code of conduct, which includes talking to the student, talking to the parent. We'll use all the methods, especially as we start, but it is a non-negotiable. And if it gets to the point where we are not finding a solution together, the student will be removed from school. Visitors are a little easier. We don't have to have visitors. So if they're arguing with us about a mask, they just don't come into school. But we will work with students. We absolutely will. But it's not something that we can negotiate on because it's not something we have a choice about. So students or staff screening, referral, and reentry. Now, I'm going to preface what we say in this as this is what we have to do as of 7:37 on August 13th. There are no exceptions, according to New York State, that if somebody displays a symptom, and I'm saying that on purpose, a symptom, it's not multiple symptoms, it is one symptom. They must leave school or not come to school. They must visit their doctor. And there are paths of non-COVID symptoms, but no test in COVID. But what you will see in all of these, if you do become COVID positive, it's a whole different path with the New York State DOH. But say it's not COVID, it's an ear infection. Maybe they don't know. But at this point, there is no re-entry into school without a negative COVID test. And this is very strict, and it is not something we have a choice on because the language from New York State does not provide any option. So as everybody thinks about that, I'm going to answer another question. Are face shields an alternative for masks? No, they are not, and that is not our choice. That is something New York State has said. They said face shields cannot replace face coverings. If a student or faculty staff wanted to wear a face shield with a mask, that is okay, but it has to be a cloth mask. Wendy, I'm going to bring it up because I find it as funny as you do. Really, runny nose, OMG, in winter. Yes, that is what they are saying. And I need to make this very clear. Very clear. This is not the district. And what I hope that our superintendents, local doctors, our local Department of Health are as frustrated with this as all of us. And what they have told us is that the state level DOH will be handing guidance down soon. And I am just optimistic that that guidance does relax a little bit for allergies, for a runny nose, for if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, no, it's an ear infection, you can go back to school. Right now, those exceptions don't exist, but I am optimistic. So I wanted to put it out there just so we know what we're dealing with. And as soon as we have any information on it, I will get it out to you. Mrs. Mary, good question. What happens when your doctor won't test for a common headache? As it stands right now, I show symptoms of I have a headache and a runny nose. I have to leave school. The doctor doesn't give me a test. I don't come back to school. And that goes for our students as well. And I think what the state is hopefully seeing is how ridiculous this situation is. or the parent refuses, it's the same situation. I think I'm usually optimistic, and that's no different right now. But we don't have to worry about parents refusing to have their child tested for a runny nose or headache. The doctors aren't going to do it. We don't have enough tests in this area. The doctors might not even be able to see all the students who have runny noses that have to come back to school. So it's not going to get there because you won't have to refuse because the doctors aren't going to give out their limited tests for runny noses. So just to clarify, school will not be testing for COVID or sending for COVID. We as parents make the appointments, absolutely. Governor Cuomo talked about testing in schools. I just had a phone call with a webinar with local superintendents and Steuben County, and they don't see how it's possible, even if we were told to test in schools. So it's not something that is going to happen. And I am going to do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't, because that's not what schools are meant for. So nothing at this time, and even the Steuben County doesn't see how that's possible. My child has allergies. I agree with Julie. Yes, this came up with faculty and staff, and this is where we are right now. And I share your frustration. I share everyone's frustration, and that's why I'm going to be the first one who tells you when these allowances come out, because it makes sense for a doctor to be able to say, this student has allergies. I've had this student since they were born. I know it's allergies. It's not COVID. Mr. Henshaw, thanks for joining. I don't know if there's any other students out here joining us, but I like it. Are there any other mask alternatives that can be worn for comfort? So cloth mask, cover the nose and mouth. I have seen lately that there are different setups with regards to how it hooks around your neck. So I'm open to ideas, and especially Mr. Henshaw or parents, if you have an idea, please just, I can't say yes to an alternative before I see it, but I think the comfort thing is big. My ears start to hurt really quickly with some of those masks. So we'll be open to it, Mr. Henshaw, just let us know. Is there communication between local doctors' offices on this issue of the yes, there is. Doctors, local areas, we're all pushing back. The common message from all of us is that this is unsustainable and it doesn't work. So it goes to your question, are we working together? Yes. It goes to Mrs. Mary's question of then how do we educate the student who can't get a test or for other reasons? This is why it's unsustainable. All right. Going on, I am going to let Mrs. Smith talk about close and proximate as I read through some of these comments to see which ones we should pull up.
Okay, so we're talking about the distance between each other. We talked earlier about masks, and if you are outside of that 6-foot distance as we would be at our desks, possibly at a special, if we have that great distance, we don't have to wear our masks. That's a great thing. But if we take a look at our flow chart here, an individual who had close or proximate contact within that 6 feet for more than 10 minutes, you stay home for the 14 days after your last exposure and released from the doctor, and you may attend school. Mr. Hahn, Ms. Eggleston, feel free to jump in and help me out here. An individual who have not had close or proximate contact may attend school. I think at this time, while Mr. Harper's reading, I think it's important. There are so many facts being thrown at us. I want you to envision your child's day. They're going to be coming in the school. They're going to come down, get to their classroom just like they normally would. And when they step inside their classroom, they're going to take their coats off, and this is in the elementary. They're going to unpack their stuff, and they're going to wash their hands and get ready for the day. Their day is going to be very similar with some changes, like the masks. But our kids are amazing, and our faculty and staff are amazing. And I really think in no time at all, they're going to get with these routines, and it's not going to be another thought with them. And Mr. Kohler had made a question at the beginning about reassurance. What reassurances can we give? Our Arkport faculty and staff are amazing at taking care of our kids and would do anything to protect your children. Whenever they're leaving the room, every time they enter a new classroom environment, they're sanitizing or they are washing with soap and water in order to keep the germs to low as possible. One of the amazing things, they're going to be sanitizing our playground during the day. Will it be every hour? It won't be, but that is mind-blowing that our door handles, our rooms will be sanitized at least once during the day, railings all the time, bathrooms every hour, and our playground. That's just amazing. Sorry, Mr. Harper, you left me alone. I went off.
Oh, you're good. No. I knew the risks, Mrs. Smith, and that's why we all love you, okay? So there are a lot of comments about this, and I understand it. It is unsustainable for all the comments that are being made about, how are we going to educate a child who's waiting for a COVID test? How are we going to educate a child who the parents just don't, it's a runny nose, I don't need a COVID test for that, and refuse to get the test. I understand everyone's frustration. It is unsustainable. And that's why I have absolute faith that it's going to change. And if it doesn't, and we do end up with, I look back at one of the comments, what was it, 2/3 of our students are out because they're waiting for a COVID test. That's when I'm going to say this, if New York State doesn't come to their senses, and keep the comments out of the comments, okay? I know it's kind of funny that I'm saying that. We would have to look at a full online model, because here's what happens. We're not just talking about 2/3 of our students. We're talking about 2/3 of our faculty and staff. If I have a runny nose, I am going home. Now, okay, again, no comments about the superintendent not being needed to be in school, but let's talk about our teachers. So it is unsustainable, and we will be forced to go to a full online model. And that's how we will take care of the education of our students if it's not changed. Thank you for trying to take care of this, Mrs. Smith. The close and proximate contact has to do with what if somebody does test positive. And this is why we are 6 feet apart in classrooms, because the students who would need to, or the faculty who would need to quarantine, are those individuals that we cannot say for sure were more than 6 feet for less than 10 minutes. So that's kind of where we look at, and we talk about as we go through some closures about what this means for the close and proximate. I'm going to go back up through some of these, and I think there was some questions. And again, we could take all night talking about the symptoms and how we're going to deal with that. But again, it's going to change, so I don't want to take too much time. We can go with this one. Will students switch classes as normal, or will it be staggered? Mrs. Smith, Mr. Hahn?
They will be switching as normal. Remember, we'll be at 50% occupancy upstairs. And a typical flow of traffic when we have students here on a normal school day, one side of the hall is going in one direction and then the opposite side is going the other. So with half the amount of kids up here, we can certainly do that. Kids will get hand sanitizer before they exit a classroom. Their mask will be on, and then they'll get hand sanitizer again when they enter their next class. So yes, they'll be switching as normal.
Same in the elementary for specials.
Will all staff get tested before school starts? No, they will not be. There is no mandate to do that, and I do not have the power or authority to ask all faculty and staff to get tested before school starts. But good question. And as we move on here a little bit I cannot give everyone the answer that you're looking for, especially with the COVID symptoms. But please understand that we are putting ourselves in a position that when and if, without wasting too much time, we will be able to go to 100% remote learning if we need to. So those plans are in place. Yes, so that goes to Mrs. Shannon just put up the question, are we prepared to go fully online? Yes, and we talk about that later on in our slideshow. Can you wear a bandana? Yes, you can, Cody. It's a cloth mask that covers your face and your mouth. So yes, a bandana is good. So here's what happens when a student or a faculty or staff test positive. And this is just the overview of the cleaning process so you know what happens. We close off the area. We open outside windows and doors in that area so that we can increase circulation. If we can, we will wait 24 hours before cleaning that area. And that's for two reasons. We want, if there is any airborne virus, to allow it to settle. And also we allow time for the virus to die in that area. Then we clean and disinfect. Once the area has been appropriately cleaned, we open it back up again. So I just wanted to go over quickly what we're doing in this case for cleaning. When we talk about school closures, I wanted to be sure that we are all on the same page about what will happen if we have a confirmed positive case. So if we have a confirmed positive, the DOH, the Department of Health, will recommend that we close for 24 hours. And so if the DOH is going to recommend it, we will be closing for 24 hours if we have a confirmed positive. Now, this is meant to allow us time to contact trace with the DOH, make sure that we know what areas are affected, and allow our cleaning staff time to safely clean the areas. We don't want them rushing through and, number one, not doing a thorough job, and number two, putting themselves at risk if they are trying to do it too quickly. So that is if we have a positive case, we will be closing for 24 hours. Number two, if we have two or more positive cases simultaneously, so we 2-3 students, 2-3 faculty staff, a combination, test positive, we will be closing for 2 to 5 days. And this is in response to the fact that if we can determine those two students had close contact, sometimes it's their cousins, well, they had a play date, we will be able to reopen quickly if we know what those two students and their interactions were, our faculty and staff. If it is not clear, we need a longer time to clean and disinfect and also contact trace. So that's kind of where we are with our closures. Morning drop-off. I'm going to hand this off to Mrs. Smith or Mr. Hahn while I read some of these comments and see what we need to bring up.
So in the back parking lot, you'll come in your entrance, drive over, and if you'll notice the orange is for the pre-K 6. They can get dropped right off and come over the closest door there. You can see your child come into the building. Our 712, Mr. Hahn, they're going to be coming on the East Ave side, right over to the front doors of the PAC, correct?
Correct. Yep. And where they'll get screened and then enter into the lobby and grab and go breakfast will be there. And when the bell rings, they're on their way to start their day.
Now, Mr. Hahn, last year we had the high schoolers wait and have the elementary students go first. And that put the high schoolers a little bit behind the ball. They were wonderful in being patient and waiting for our elementary students. But this year we've changed it up, and we're going to have the elementary wait and let the high schoolers go first so that they can get to their lockers and their classes more efficiently. And then our elementary will be dispersed.
That is correct.
So as you guys might look at the graphic, I'm going to pull up a comment regarding elementary sections for Mrs. Smith.
So what does it look like for students in the elementary if there are 3 sections but only 2 teachers? That is a great question. So what we're doing is the third person is going to be a support staff, one of our teacher aides. Now, will there be an assigned teacher? We're looking at a more of a departmentalized but a team aspect. The 2 teachers and the aide will be planning daily, and there will be teachers within every single classroom teaching the core direct instruction. There won't be a classroom that does not have a teacher in it throughout the day. They're going to be rotating throughout the 3 classrooms. And we understand the relationship being very important. Our teachers have struggled with the fact that they're going to be sharing classes. Everybody really appreciates that classroom family atmosphere that they create throughout the year. But they've also dove into the fact that they're going to be sharing this, and their family has just gotten bigger by expanding it with another adult and into another classroom.
Going back a little bit with a question about if a child does get a cold and gets a negative test, how long is it good for? I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but most of the time with a student and our children, if they're sick, they stay home till they get better and they have that negative test. It should be good for that period of time. But that's going to be something that Mrs. Smith, Nurse Smith, not Mrs. Smith, Nurse Smith will be working with you and your doctor on about how long is that good for and what that period is. So while waiting where everyone is going to stand, I see no way to social distance. It's a good question, Mr. Osmond. That's why, remember, we are getting 50% of our students in 712 on a daily basis. And then another 50% of those students ride the bus, if not more. So we will have socially distanced markers. We will have faculty and staff as normal in the areas in the morning to ensure that we are socially distancing. But that's also why we're wearing masks, because it is a combination of social distance if you cannot wear a mask. But there is room both in the PAC and the PAC hallway for those students to be. What is your plan for when teachers have symptoms and you have, do you have a backup plan to replace the teacher? Yes, we have hired 6 everyday subs. So they are with us every day of the week. And we normally have 2. So we've added 4 more. And so we will have them in the building. So we've made sure that we have a good, strong sub pool that just come to us and no one else. So that is our backup plan. Now that only works, Cody, as we have the people to replace the teachers. And this goes down that question of earlier about if the state doesn't loosen up restrictions on runny nose, allergies, we will quickly be in a position where we will be 100% online. Has New York State set parameters that need to be met in order for the school to open in full, or is that decision that the district will make? And that's a really good question, and the state has not released any information. It will not be, well, now that I think about that question, if we had enough classrooms to socially distance 500 students, we could be back here in full. So it really is on the districts, but the parameters that New York State has placed upon us make it impossible with the socially distancing, with the mask requirements. So it would take New York State relaxing some of the regulations for us to be back in full. And that's a discussion we will absolutely have as those regulations hopefully do get relaxed. Another great but tough question from Mrs. Smith.
As a past kindergarten teacher, we love orientation because we know that pre-K and kindergarten need to come into the building just as much as their parents need to come in and see where their babies are going to be going and spending the day, and to lay eyes on the person that they're going to be leaving them with and trusting them with. Right now, considering the health concerns that we have, we're trying to be creative on how we're still going to have that happen. So stay tuned for more information.
It's important. And I know better than to say too much in front of my two principals and our school counselor, but we've been discussing what to do, especially with our pre-K and kindergartners, and about how do we get into the building? How do parents get into the building? It's obviously not as easy, but we are trying to figure it out for you and your families. So with K-6 riding the bus, they will not have to wait until the high schoolers are in. So we will dismiss our buses as normal. And usually what happens is there's a delay, and this is what we've seen in years past. The bussers get in before the walkers get out of the back and the pack. So they will not have to wait on the bus until the other students come out. Megan asks, if we choose to homeschool, will we be provided the curriculum? If just like in any other year, the district cannot actually give curriculum to homeschool parents, but what we can do is make sure that the resources are available and clearly put out there for families that do choose that about what we are doing in school, so that you at least have some resources and you know what's happening out in the class. And if we choose to homeschool and the school goes to remote learning, will this now be available to us? Yes, in short. If we are in a situation like we were at the end of last school year where we are closed for an extended period of time, we would absolutely extend that opportunity to families that chose to homeschool. What if we don't have internet? Very good question. We have bought, the district has bought 30 hotspots for students to take home. So that is something that is available to students. And if that is something that you're interested in, or that you need to, that you know a family that might be interested, just please have them call the district, and we'll put you in touch with our tech department and put you on the list for those hotspots. Mrs. Smith?
So clarification, there will be an aide that rotates between the 3 rooms, just like we will have the 2 teachers rotating between the 3 rooms. They won't be left with just, there's not going to be a class. And as Mrs. Mary wrote in another comment that she loves our aides. All of our faculty and staff work very hard, and our aides definitely work very hard, and we trust them. But we know that our teachers are certified and good at what they do, and you teachers will be in the classrooms throughout the day. There will not be a class left that does not see a teacher. The teachers are they're working very hard at being able to plan out their schedules to be in the classes all day long, rotating throughout the 3 rooms.
Christy asks something about the remote learning and childcare for parents who still need to work, attend their place of employment during the school day. We are still required to partner with local areas to provide homeschool childcare options, and that is absolutely something we've been discussing for as first our own faculty and staff if we need to go remote. But I imagine if we are put in a position that we are in extended online learning period, that the state would extend the requirement that we work with our local partners to help families find childcare. So yes, we would have something in place. Let's jump over to dismissal. Mr. Hahn, Mrs. Smith.
So dismissal at the end of the day. Well, it looks like all these little boxes are elementary. So if we start at the yellow one, pre-K 1 exit. The yellow, they're going to be able to come right out. You'll be able to pick your child up at that door. 2 through 4 is on the side there with the lilac color. And then we have the blue on the left, fifth and sixth will come right out on their own and either head to the parking lot to be picked up or be walking. Something to keep in mind for our PK1 exit and our 2 through 4 exit, if you have a child in each of those groups, the first couple days, Mr. Harper has said this a couple times now, that give us a few days to figure out the kinks. We are not perfect, and this is not going to be perfect on the first day, but we will be able to combine those kids. If you have a first grader and a third grader, we'll be able to talk with the teachers, and at the end of the day, we'll be able to have you go to one exit. The first week, we're going to run like this, though, where they're coming out of their exits for their grade levels.
Thank you. Ms. Eggleston, your scenery has changed and you're just in time for a question.
The start time and dismissal staying the same. Yes, the start time and dismissal are staying the same. Is the time between classes in the high school staying the same? Yes, so there's 3 minutes between classes in the high school, and that will remain the same.
Same since when? Because 2:45 is the new dismissal time.
Same since we started working on it over the summer. So obviously our friends and family don't know about it.
This is where we are, and everybody's in this position. Has it been 2 weeks since we stopped school in March, or 6 years?
Right. There is an updated bell schedule. So our students' day is starting at 7:55 in the morning, which is 5 minutes earlier than last year. And their day is ending at 2:45, which is a half hour earlier than last year.
And those will go out with the schedules for the students. What are we doing with the computers in class? So 7 through 12, we have one-to-one devices that the students are assigned. So their computers will be with them. So it's not something that we have to worry about disinfecting between classes because they take them with them. We do have one-to-one devices, PK through 12 actually, but the 7 to 12 bring them around, but the devices that are downstairs will be assigned to a student, so they will have their device that they use, so there won't be any sharing of devices. A question about screening in the morning, and I'm going to ask, I'm drawing a blank. So with screenings taking place at school, will the students be able to start entering the building earlier than they were able to in the past? I believe we open the doors at 7:30 in the morning, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Hahn, right? At the PAC?
We have, yep.
And so we will start with 7:30. And if we need to adjust that, and I'm speaking to Mrs. Smith's comment, Shannon's comment, we'll adjust it. But with the decrease in population, especially in 712, and people getting screened at the bus stops as well, we will adjust if we need to, and we'll take a look at that right away. And then whether it's adjusting it about 5 or 10 minutes, that's easy. That's an announcement to parents to know that they can come earlier. All right. Ms. Exton, you want to talk about September a little bit?
Sure. So for us, the point of September is, like Mr. Harper mentioned earlier, our kiddos haven't been in the building in months. So we really miss them, and chances are they have, established some new routines at home and that kind of thing. And so we're just going to need a lot of extra time to get back into the routine of what our new normal is going to be. So just the regular things of being in school, like making sure you're getting to your class on time and managing your time and when you eat breakfast and lunch and that kind of thing. But also some new routines like wearing your mask in the hallway, on the bus, in common areas, sanitizing your hands when you go in and out of the classrooms. For the elementary school, some extra stops in the bathroom to wash up, all of that kind of thing. So really, the focus for September is going to be a lot of that, building the routines, making sure that all of the adults and the kids in the building are comfortable with all of the new routines and things that we're going to be practicing so that it really becomes second nature. By the end of September, the goal is really we're ready to learn. We're ready for academics. We've got practicing hand washing and masks and all of that down. We've got the regular routines that all high school and elementary kids struggle with, like time management, practicing that. We're also, the other piece of this is introducing Schoology, which is a learning management system which will help us be good online learners and good online teachers if we do have to go remote for any amount of time, really. So another big piece of September is helping our kids understand how to use that system, helping our teachers understand how to use that system, which would make online learning a little bit more streamlined for us if we had to go that route.
Thank you. And I'm gonna, this is a good question. The best person to answer this question is Mrs. Dagan, so we can follow up with some information from her. And as much as Ms. Eggleston, Mrs. Smith, and Mr. Hine can answer this, please do.
So as far as the scheduling goes for that, because we're trying to group our special needs populations together so that they can really maximize the time that they have with their special education teachers. So on the day that they're not in their regular typical classes, they'd be able to be working with their special education teacher on IEP goals, study habits, working on their assignments, and that kind of thing throughout the day. So it's definitely for sure still a work in progress about exactly what those days would look like for those kiddos. And we know, like, all of September, we're going to be really flexible with scheduling and that kind of thing, just because we're going to have to be. We're figuring it out as we go on that. So that's a good question.
And what we're also trying.
Yeah, and I know that Mrs. Dagan has been reaching out to families that this may impact, and we're still, as Ms. Eggleston said, developing a plan for what those days are going to look like, but it's going to be a fluid situation. We may have kids that are here 5 days a week initially, and they're doing well, where maybe they don't need to be, and then vice versa. So it's a fluid situation. Mrs. Dagan has a firm grasp on what this is going to look like, and I know that she'll be reaching out to everybody.
So along with making sure that the students in those classrooms have the same schedule, we're also aligning the teachers' schedules as well. So the students in those classrooms that are here 5 days a week will be with teachers. And I think it's important to know they're not going to just be in study halls or with nothing to do. They will be assigned to teachers, and we will be doing work with them. For kids that are being dropped off, do the parents go in and get them just like before? So is this a pickup or drop off? I'll answer both. For a parent that is dropping off a student, you can go up to the door with them as they get checked in and house screened, but you cannot enter. And again, at the end of the day, you'll come up to the door. We all know each other. We'll see who's coming up to the door. We'll make sure your student comes over, but parents will not be able to come into the building at pickup and drop off. What is our plan for school buses? So we are cutting the capacity of our school buses in half. So we're going to try to keep our school buses between 25 and 30 students. Our capacity is usually 64. When we can, we're going to go one to seat. We have to wear masks while we're in the school bus. So we'll go one per seat with masks on. Family members can sit together. And if then we need to have some other students sit together, then we will go to students that are in the same cohort as in grade level. This was brought up, the level of detail that we have to go through. Somebody brought up a pre-K student who is getting on the bus for the first time. Pre-K student does not want to sit alone, and we will make those changes that we have to, whether it's pre-K students sitting together, whether it is a pre-K student being able to sit with an older parent, brother or sister. We'll make those accommodations and make sure that our students are safe and feel comfortable on the buses. A question for, does the AB schedule affect any student that has a 504? I'm going to say that Mrs. Dagan is making phone calls home to all students with 504 or an IEP to discuss exactly that. So I know she's making those rounds, so just hold tight and she'll be getting to all those parents. A question about AB schedule, we answered it before. I'm going to have Miss Eggleston type in that answer into the comments at the bottom, and so that it's in the chat so we can look back at that. So we'll go to, yep, thank you. And to the parent that says with thriving with the 504 plan, we will be talking about individual students and what those needs are. And that's why Mrs. Dagan is calling around. Question from Mrs. Mary. So if a child gets dropped off and the parent leaves, what happens when the child has a fever of 100.1 degrees? So we are required to have an area set aside in the school district for when a student or faculty staff member shows symptoms. I had a suggestion today during our faculty staff meeting that we call it the Fortress of Solitude. We're looking for better names than what the state calls it, which is an isolation room. So I'm open to good, clean suggestions. And so they would go to that room and it would be kept as private as possible during the screening. We would move them there and then we would try to contact the parents or any person that is on the emergency contact because the student would need to go home. But we would, we have to make contact. We can't just send a student home and not know where they're going to. Or a student is home alone, mom and dad are both at work, the student has a temp, we will deal with that as it comes. We can't send a student home to no one. So if I do not want to see the time that a student is in the Fortress of Solitude for an entire day, but if we can't send a young student home alone. Now, it does go for older students. Say a 10th grader is walking to school and gets temped. We would work with that student right away to try to contact parents or guardians to see if can the student walk home alone? Is that okay? Can they go home? So we'll work on the individual level. We will transport a student if we need to, even if they are showing symptoms. And that's another thing that we need to deal with as those situations come up. But we do have plans. So here's our school closure progression. And this is just to make sure that we are clear, not only with our faculty and staff, but our families as well. What happens when we close? So if we have to close for a day, we're not going to go 100% online just like that. Our students would catch up on assigned work and teachers would prepare for the possibility of a closure. What we look for in days 2 and 3 as the teachers start to make contact and start running mini online lessons with our students to work out the bugs, see if everybody has a connection at home. Otis Harper didn't put through that he needed a hotspot, so we got to get him one before day 4, because day 4 and on, we go to 100% online learning. I'm going to go to some comments. Mr. Hahn, you want to talk about our nurse protocols?
Yes, of course. So obviously you guys see this on the screen, procedures that the nurse's office will be primarily used for well visits and things such as that. Medications, blood sugar checks, ice packs, Band-Aids, head checks, and screenings. That's the whole point of the, what do we call it? Fortress of Solitude. Is that what you said, Mr. Harper?
That's the working title right now.
Yep,
Again, I'm open to suggestions.
Yep, I saw wellness area in the comments as well, so I'll probably float back and forth between those two. But the thinking in not having the nurse's office be the fortress of solitude was that if a student is in there, then we are closed off from all of the from completing all the things that Nurse Smith would have to do that you see on your screen, which would not be good. And if possible, the nurse will come to the student or a group of students or meet them in the hallway in hopes to reduce traffic. And if a teacher or staff member calls with concerns regarding COVID-19 symptoms exhibited by a student or staff member, then that individual will go right to the isolation room. The nurse will meet them at the isolation room, or depending on the age, the nurse may go get the student in full PPE and take them to that room.
So just to reiterate, Mrs. Smith, Nurse Smith will be going out of the office as much as possible because we do have students who go to the nurse's office on a daily basis. And what we want to make sure is that that remains as clean and safe for our well checks and our everyday visits as possible. I just wrote it down. I do like wellness area. Miss Eggleston, right up your alley, this question.
For sure. So in the elementary school, in grades pre-K through 6, we're going to be using a curriculum that we looked into last year, and it's called Peace First. So it's SEL every single week in all of the classrooms for 30 minutes. And so those lessons are being delivered by classroom teachers along with PE teachers as well, to get them involved in the emotional health of kiddos. Obviously, the student services team would be kind of overseeing that as well, so that we knew what was going on in our classrooms. So those lessons are geared more toward like the character development, friendship skills, social skills, that kind of thing. So that's PK6. And then in the high school, we'll be continuing to use our program called Go Strengths, which is really like an online-based kind of thing that we can do at the classroom levels. Typically in the high school, it's a lot more of like student self-identifying or parents self-identifying, where the student services team can help out specifically with individual social emotional things. So we will definitely continue to do that. And we definitely encourage parents who have concerns about their kiddos to reach out to our student services team so that we can set up, a plan to be more preventative when school starts. Because we definitely agree that sometimes the adults will be nervous, sometimes the kids will be nervous, and we'll all get through it. But yeah, valid concerns for sure.
Just bringing this one up, I'm just going to ask for a little bit more context around what tests we're talking about. So if you could reply in the comments and let us know. Another besting question. Thank you, Mrs. Mary, because this is important. So we will be temp checking at the doors. Now that is an issue for whether or not a parent drops a student off. But if we temp check we will be temp checking at the bus stops. And if the parent is not home and the student temp checks high, the bus will not leave the student. They won't be sent back into an empty house. What will happen is that we will have a bus driver on standby. And what will happen is that as soon as if this does happen, the main bus driver will stay with the student. Yes, the bus will be stopped there and waiting, but we will not leave the student there by themselves. They will call back to the bus garage. A van will be sent where we can pick up the child. If we have to bring them back to the wellness/fortress of solitude, we will. If we have to take them to the parent, we will, but then the bus can move on. Okay? All right. So that is the last slide. So I'm just going to kind of run through. I'm going to change our view here, see how that goes. I don't know if I want to be the biggest picture on the screen. Oh, I got the nodding yes. Okay, so I'm just going to run through some of these questions here at the end. Please keep posting comments. I really appreciate everybody sticking with us as long as you have. This has been really helpful, not only for us to see what the questions are out there, but I think it's been great to be able to talk to you guys as well. I think, Sarah, you can expand. This goes to what you were just talking about, correct?
Yeah, that's right. If any parents want to talk to us individually at school about some concerns that you have about your kiddos, please feel free to reach out right at the beginning of the year, and we can help out with that. But I think everybody, all of the adults in the building this year will be very sensitive to students' emotions and probably our own emotions as well. So, yeah.
What times? What are the times you wear a mask? Those will be in the common areas. So if students are in the hallways, they will be wearing a mask. If they are on the playground at recess, we would rather have our students wear their masks at recess than try to keep kids 6 feet apart or 12 feet apart by New York State standards, because that's what you have to do when you are vigorously exercising. So recess is not the same if you are 12 or 6 feet apart. So we'll be wearing masks on the playground. We will be wearing masks during PE if we are 6 feet or closer, because again, PE, you have to be 12 feet apart, and that's not the PE that I know. And Mr. Hahn, you can talk about PE at 12 feet. Not very easy. So it's really those times of movement through common areas and when we can't keep the 6 feet. But that's why we're designing our classrooms, to make sure that when they're in the classroom, they can take their masks off. So question about, what good does a hotspot do when you don't have cell service? So those are the types of questions that you have to call up and talk to the school about, because our hotspots run off of multiple cell services. So you might not have AT&T at your house, but if you have Sprint, it can run that way. There are situations where there is no cell service at a home. And then we have hotspots for in our parking lot. You can come to those. Even if a student has a hotspot that they can be given and you need to drive to a certain place, if all else fails, we are talking about having flash drives available to be able to bring work out to students that way. So we'll go through these steps, and in the last spot, we will be able to provide work for students on flash drives. Great question, Mrs. Mary. If the nurse has to quarantine, is there another nurse that will come in? Yes, we have sub-nurses as well. We have thought about that, and yes, we do have sub-nurses, because that will be an issue. Can we have room conferences with teachers while they are teaching in school? No, that we are limiting the Zooming while in school, or the streaming while in school. That won't be happening. What about little kids playing with their masks all day? When we talk about September, this is what we're talking about. We will have extra masks. I know, especially for the young kids, we will have extra masks for them in school. We will have disposable masks. We will have extra cloth masks for them. It's gonna be an issue, and that's why I say this, and it is absolutely true. I have absolute faith in our elementary school teachers to work with our kids to make sure that they can make it through the day with a clean mask. Tara, this has not been addressed. So if one sibling has symptoms like a fever, do the rest of the siblings also need to stay home in quarantine? No, they do not. So that's come up with other schools, but we got a direct answer from DOH. A family of 3 students, one has a fever, that student has to go home, nobody else has to go home. So that is a good question and a good clarifier. Mr. Hahn?
Christy, yes, they will be. We're going to work bus runs out so kids on the off days that aren't in school still have the opportunity to go to BOCES. And then so Cameron in this case will be picked up on his off day, and anybody else that attends BOCES. And the way the afternoon run is structured, they'll get back and literally hop on another bus because we dismiss at 2:45 now, and then be transported back home.
This is for anyone who wants to answer it in our sidebar here.
Well, in the elementary, they're not going to be restricted, but we have talked about going at scheduled times with the group. But if anybody has an emergency or a time that they need to go that's not during the class group time for the primary grades, they absolutely will be allowed to go.
Yeah, and upstairs, no, they're not restricted. Again, it's sanitize, leave in the room, mask on for sure, wash your hands, and then head back to class and sanitize on your way back in.
Yep, and that's another reason that we've decreased the population in the high school, because that does allow our students to move a little bit more freely. Mrs. Mary, I know these aren't your rules, but masks during PE, I like that you said they are not our rules. New York State says for PE, chorus, and
wind-blown instruments.
Woodwind instruments, did you say, Mr. Hahn? Right?
Yeah, or wind-blown trumpet.
Yes. Brass, 12 feet of distance has to be maintained. Now, we are lucky that we have a giant chorus room, so we can separate by 12 feet. A band is an issue across all school districts, and I'm not going to speak for her, but I think Ms. Alexanderson has some good plans cooking for how we're going to do band. But then I go to PE, and I would rather wear, I love pickleball in high school. I'd rather wear a mask and be able to play pickleball than have to be 12 feet apart and try to figure out how to do that. How do you do PE with 12 feet? Mr. Hahn?
Yeah, I certainly think that's a valid concern, Ashley. But our PE teachers are pretty creative, and they'll come up with activities and units and lessons where they'll either be able to be separated out by 12 feet, or if they have to wear a mask, they're not going to go outside and run 2 miles on the track. They'll be cognizant and aware of that, and pay attention to our kids and how they're adapting to this change, because it certainly is strange to think about phys ed wearing a mask when we know that that's a time where kids get a lot of energy out. But I trust our PE department, and they'll make the best of it and be very aware of the needs of our kids.
And that goes to the next comment here that we had. Our teachers will pay attention. Again, our PE teachers, our faculty and staff. I mean, our teachers, you see some of our kids running around on a normal day during recess. Our teachers are pulling them aside saying, cool down, get some water, get some air. So they will do that again. Another comment about the room conferences. So I might have been a little confused about the last comment, but we will have opportunities to conference with teachers throughout the year, we're talking about how do we do open house without bringing people in. So you will be able to conference with your teachers. We will not be doing in-person conferences right away, but they will have chances for you to talk to your teacher, your students' teachers, and work with them. So yes, it's just not the live streaming. We're not doing the live streaming during the day. Mr. Hahn?
That's a good question, Mackenzie. That depends if we're remote learning or not. I would certainly suggest that you talk with your teachers. Again, our teachers are going to be working with our students and helping support every needs and help our students be successful.
I just put the start and school times in the chat there at the end, so I'll go over that question. Our PE classes might be small enough not to wear masks. So again, some of these activities, I'm going to defer to the actual expert in this room right now, Mr. Hahn.
It depends on the activity that's being taught, or the unit that's being taught in the phys ed class. I mean, you're not going to have a very successful soccer or basketball unit when everybody has to be 12 feet apart. So that may be a situation where they have to wear masks if they're less than 12 feet apart. However, if they're working on individual ball handling stuff and they're 12 feet apart, they can pull their mask down. Again, our PE teachers will do a very nice job with that. I'm confident in saying that. PE classes may be small enough in some instances, but however, when you look at situations when we have to be inside, and if you have to have every kid apart 12 feet, that eats up a ton of space because it's 12 feet in every direction. So I hope I explained that all right, Ashley.
We will be moving to bottled water. We are not allowed to have the bubblers or the stop and drink parts of the water fountains, but we are installing bottle fillers throughout the building. And in the elementary classrooms that just got their new sinks, we are changing those to bottle fillers as well. So yes, we will provide water bottles for students that don't have them. Students can bring in their own. And then what I think the correct answer, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Hahn, is that how that's dealt with on a class basis is up to the teacher. But we'll be providing them. They absolutely can bring their own if they would like to. So again, and I know these are questions coming up, we're gonna rely on our PE teachers to be paying attention to what's going on in those classes. And it's something that we talk about September and building the new routines. This is something that our students are going to have to pay attention to. Our students are going to have to advocate for, I need to take a break, I need to use my inhaler. But those are the things that we'll work through with our students. We talk about cross country. Right now, we don't have sports, and that's a big thing that they got to figure out. How do you run a sport when you have to wear masks? We do see some of our professional athletes right now wearing masks. So fortunately, we don't have to think about that right now because sports are not on the table.
And the start date for fall sports is delayed until September 21st. So that's when the preseason could start, when if everything was running as normal, that preseason start date would be in 11 days. I can tell everybody that the regional and state championships for fall sports have been canceled already. Section 5 was waiting on the governor's announcement last week, whether schools were going to have the go button pushed or not. But here it is Thursday night, and we haven't heard from the New York State Public High School Athletics Association or Section 5 yet. When we do, we'll certainly get that information out. I know it's a very hot topic, and I'm right there with all of you on that.
Heidi, great question about ventilation. So we are very fortunate that our school is up to code, and we comply throughout the school district with our ventilation system. We will absolutely recommend that windows be open. And right now that temperature is 45 degrees, but we can always wear sweaters. So yes, windows will be open to help ventilation, but our ventilation system is up to code, not just up to code, but up to the standards that they are asking us to have in this time. And so we didn't have to upgrade. We don't have to do anything. We will be changing the filters on our ventilation system more often, but we are where we need to be with our ventilation in our school. We are lucky because some schools are not where they need to be. Will there be places to fill water bottles? Yes. Every hallway will have a water bottle filler. We've installed 4 over the last couple of years. We're installing a new 4. We just got the bid to have those installed, so those will be in the next couple of days. For our youngest students, which classrooms will have them in the classroom, Mrs. Smith?
So pre-K through 2nd grade have drinking fountains within their classrooms.
Okay, so in every hallway, there will be one, or in the classes, they will have one to fill their water bottles. What if students goes on vacation within New York State? Do they have to quarantine? Within New York State, no. Within a state, if you vacation to a state that is not on the list in New York State, you don't have to quarantine. But if you do go to a state that's on the list, you would. So within New York State, you are good. You don't have to quarantine. Mrs. Smith?
I thought you were going to take this one, Mr. Harper. I could see it.
It's all you, Mrs. Smith.
All right. Will classes still attempt to have their holiday parties and birthdays? Yes, because this comes back to our SEL, that social emotional learning, that taking care of each other and looking for the normals that make life really joyous. So we're looking to still keep that in. Even though there's 3 classrooms, yes, we're looking to do that in the elementary as much as possible. They're still bringing in birthday treats. We've gone to prepackaged snacks here a few years ago, and we're just asking that the teachers have had these questions as well. They don't want to give up celebrating your children's birthdays. They know how important this is to them, and the holiday parties as well. So we still will be following along and celebrating and doing parties and birthdays.
Yeah, and it just might be an extra step. The teacher might wipe down the packages in the morning and set them aside. It will do those things. We've all made it very clear that we want to keep as much of the normal activities. It might take a little longer, might be an extra step or 2, but we want to do those things. Mrs. Smith?
We could not come back if we were not having snack. That's kind of a deal breaker in the elementary. I'm pretty sure probably all throughout the building, but especially in the elementary, we still will be having snack, and the classroom teachers will be getting a hold of you on how they're going to be doing that. But it's most likely sending in those snacks. They'll be wiped down, as Mr. Harper talked about, and group snacks will be handed out by the teachers, but everything will be sanitized and kept as neat and clean as possible, but snacks will still be had.
And New York State has said we cannot share food, and so we will not share food. And so we might have to make slight changes. Last year, it might have been a big thing of animal crackers. We might not do that, but we will still do the snacks. Absolutely. I absolutely appreciate everybody's time. I mean, we're coming up on 2 hours, which was our allotted time. This has been, again, it's been very helpful for us. We don't have all the answers. some of our answers aren't what everybody wants to hear, but this was good for us, and this is going to inform our discussions. But I appreciate it. Please don't hesitate. Anybody that's on, send us your questions. We can always add them into presentations later on. But for 50 plus people to spend 2 hours with us, I can't, I'm very appreciative. And hopefully we'll see everybody soon. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.